You don't know how lucky you are to hear this Gobbet Opus number 37 today. Evidently, the Earth was missed by a giant meteor about the size of a garage that whizzed by the Earth at 9,000 miles. So, you were so lucky to get to listen to this. A Built-in Suspenders from October 18th, 2008. A resident hit me up for a curbside after grand rounds. A curbside is where someone asks you a question about a case but does not want a formal consult. I like that term, formal consult. Sounds like I should wear a tuxedo. It is a way of giving me liability without remuneration, but it is an important way that physicians learn. The resident had a case of MRSA, or at least his patients did, and had given the patient 2 antibiotics because he wanted to, quote, double cover, end quote, the staff. Was that the right choice? Maybe. It's an enduring medical myth that you need to give 2 antibiotics for infections. I think this has evolved from tuberculosis therapy, where it is critical to give 2 antibiotics to prevent the emergence of resistant organisms. Or perhaps from early cancer chemotherapy era, when we only had really lousy drugs for Pseudomonas, and 2 antibiotics were given in the hopes that it would accomplish something. The mechanism for the prevention of resistance in tuberculosis does not apply to the treatment of bacteria. In TB, there are already pre-existing resistant strains that are selected for by the antibiotic. And generally, and there are always exceptions to this, this is not true of bacterial infections. There are occasional bacterial infections that do require 2 antibiotics. Prosthetic valve endocarditis, prosthetic joint infections, toxic shock syndrome, perhaps sepsis. But for routine staphylococcal and other infections, there is no reason to give more than 1 antibiotic when you know the susceptibility. If you don't know the susceptibility of the organism, as it is still growing in the lab, and there is a high probability that the organism is resistant to one of the empiric antibiotics, it is reasonable to give 2 antibiotics to CYA, cover your ass, or CYPA, cover your patient's ass. In infected patients, choose the wrong antibiotic up front, and the patient does have a much higher chance of dying. But you gotta double cover Pseudomonas, right? Not so much. It's a myth. Most of the time, 1 antibiotic, as long as it's not Zosin, Z-O-S-I-N, is sufficient as long as the organism is susceptible. Combination therapy for Pseudomonas does not increase cure rates or prevent the emergence of resistance. Double coverage does increase toxicity and expense. The more intense the environmental pressure, the faster organisms will evolve to survive, and some bacteria have mechanisms that increase their mutation rates in the face of environmental stress. And antibiotics are an environmental stressor for bacteria. Combination antibiotics can have 4 effects in killing bacteria. The combination has no extra killing, 1 + 1 = 1. Combination antibiotics can be additive, 1 + 1 = 2. Combination can be synergistic in their killing, 1 + 1 = 5, which I think is how the government does its budget. Or combination can be antagonistic, 1 + 1 = 0, which really is how the government is doing its budget. It turns out, at least in E. coli, that combination antibiotic therapy leads to faster development of resistance compared to single therapy. I'd always thought that the main way to get resistant organisms was to give a little bit of antibiotic for a long time. The application of the dictum, what does not kill you makes you stronger. Nietzsche was an infectious disease doctor, I think. In a recent study, they discovered that the more effective the combination of antibiotics was at killing bacteria, the faster the bacteria develop resistance. The better the antibiotics are at killing, the faster it pushes the evolution of resistance. Bummer. Quote, we find correlation between synergy and the rate of adaptation, whereby evolution in more synergistic drug combinations, typically preferred in clinical settings, is faster than evolution in antagonistic combinations. We also find that resistance to some synergistic combination evolves faster than resistance to individual drugs. End quote. So, Not only does double coverage not increase efficacy, nor does it decrease the development of resistance, in E. coli, it accelerates the development of resistance. There are times when the evidence demands the use of combination antibiotic to improve outcomes. Outside of these conditions, monotherapy should suffice and has less impact on the local microbial resistance. As we slowly slide into the post-antibiotic era, seashells by the seashore, avoiding combination antibiotics may help prevent the emergence of resistant bacteria. Remember, it's the rule in medicine. No good deed ever goes unpunished. The relevant reference is from the Proceedings of the National Academy of Science, 2008, Accelerated Evolution of Resistance in Multidrug Environments. That ends another Gobbet Opus. And now that you're done, go to iTunes and tell the world just how wonderful you think my poetry is. It's at least better than the poetry of prosthetic Vogon Jelts. See you next time for Gobbet Opus.